Acting Marcus Hale signed the divorce papers like he was approving a lunch order. Quick, careless, smiling. The café was one of those polished San Francisco spots near Union Square, where sunlight hit the glass walls at just the right angle to make everyone look successful, where people ordered $12 lattes and measured their worth by the weight of their watch and the speed of their eye contact. Marcus wore a Rolex that caught the light like a victory flare. Evelyn wore a simple grey dress with a white apron tied at her waist, her uniform from the hotel where she worked early mornings before their meetings. She'd come straight from her shift. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, dark strands framing a face that had learned not to show emotion in public. He didn't look at her when he signed, didn't need to. "You should have known this was temporary," Marcus said, tapping the page with his pen. "You were stability when I needed roots. Now I need wings." Evelyn sat quietly, hands folded, no tears, no shaking, just silence. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his expensive suit. "You were my foundation, but foundations don't get invited to the penthouse." He slid the papers across the table. "Sign. Let's both move on with our lives." She signed. Evelyn Carter. Marcus frowned briefly at the signature. "Still using your old name? I thought you'd at least keep something from our marriage." She looked up, just for half a second, and something unreadable passed through her dark eyes, something that might have been amusement or pity. "I am keeping something," she said softly. Marcus laughed and stood, already reaching for his phone. Sienna was waiting outside in heels that cost more than Evelyn's entire month's rent. Beautiful, young, connected. Everything Marcus thought he deserved, now that his company was gaining traction. "You'll land somewhere," he said dismissively, not even looking back. "Just not beside me." He walked away, convinced he had won. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known because men like him never ask questions, only make statements, was that he had just signed away access to a life he couldn't even comprehend. He didn't know the woman he'd just humiliated in a public café was the invisible architect behind half the infrastructure, deals his firm had built its reputation on. He didn't know the name she'd signed would soon appear on buildings taller than his ambition. He didn't know that the hotel uniform she wore wasn't poverty. It was research. And most of all, he didn't know that the silence he mistook for weakness was actually the sound of a door closing forever. Because when a woman who knows her worth stops explaining herself, the fall that follows isn't loud. It's final. The cafe was called Apex, which Marcus found appropriately symbolic. Everything in his life now was about reaching higher, climbing faster, leaving behind anything that weighed him down, including a wife who'd somehow forgotten how to dream big. Evelyn had been perfect 3 years ago, steady, supportive, the kind of woman who didn't ask too many questions when he worked late or who smiled at his business partners with just enough warmth to seem gracious but not enough to seem available. She'd helped him build connections in ways she probably didn't even realize. Her calm presence at dinners, her ability to remember names and details, her way of making people feel seen. But that was then. Now Marcus was on the edge of something massive. His development firm, Hale Ventures, had just secured preliminary interest from a group of investors in Chicago who dealt in 9-figure projects. Real money, real power. The kind of deals that got you mentioned in Forbes and invited to charity, galas where senators showed up. For that world, he needed a different kind of woman, someone who looked good in photographs, someone whose family name opened doors, someone who understood that marriage at his level was a partnership of brands, not hearts. Sienna DeMarco checked every box. "Are you even listening?" Marcus said, looking down at Evelyn. She'd been staring at the papers, pen poised above the signature line. "I'm reading it," she said quietly. "There's nothing to read. My lawyers made it simple. He glanced at his watch, a gesture he knew she'd notice. You get a clean break. No alimony, no asset split. Nothing complicated. You walk away free. Free, Evelyn repeated, as if testing the word. Don't make this dramatic, Marcus said, his voice dropping into that tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. We both know this stopped working months ago. You want— What do I want, Marcus? The question caught him off guard. She so rarely pushed back. I don't know, he said, recovering quickly. Some small, simple life. You were never ambitious. Not really. That's fine. Not everyone needs to conquer the world, but I do. And I can't do it with someone who's content. Different things than I do. Evelyn looked up at him then. Really looked at him. Her dark eyes were calm, almost curious, like she was studying something fragile under glass. You think I'm not ambitious, she said. It wasn't a question. You work at a hotel folding sheets, Marcus said flatly. You've had the same job since before we met. You never wanted more. I wanted what I had. Exactly. Marcus spread his hands like a lawyer resting his case. And I want more. That's the difference between us. Evelyn set down the pen. You're right. Marcus blinked. He'd expected pushback. Tears. Some kind of emotional scene that would make him feel guilty enough to offer her something extra. But this calm agreement was somehow worse. So we're done here? He pressed. Almost. Evelyn picked up the pen again. I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying I contributed nothing to your success. I didn't say nothing. You said I was content, that I never wanted more, that I'm just someone who folds sheets. Her voice remained steady, almost clinical. I want to make sure that's really how you see the last 3 years. Marcus felt a flicker of irritation. Why does it matter? You're getting a clean exit. Most women would be grateful. Most women, Evelyn echoed. She signed the papers in one smooth motion. There. Done. She stood, gathering nothing. She'd brought nothing with her except a small bag that probably held her work shoes. Don't you want to keep the papers? Marcus asked. Your lawyer can send me copies. Evelyn. He didn't know why he was stopping her. Maybe because her calm was unnerving. Maybe because some small part of him expected her to break down now that it was real. She paused, looking back at him. What happened to you? Marcus asked, and he meant it. You used to smile. You used to care about things. Evelyn's expression didn't change. I still care about things, Marcus. Just not you. She walked out of Apex without looking back. Outside, Sienna was leaning against Marcus's Tesla, scrolling through her phone. She was 26, had a trust fund, and knew everyone worth knowing in the San Francisco social scene. She looked up when Marcus emerged and smiled that perfect smile that had probably been shaped by 5 years of expensive orthodontics. Is it done? She asked. It's done. She kissed him lightly, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Good. Now we can actually start our life together. No more sneaking around. Marcus wrapped an arm around her waist as they walked to the car. The sunlight was bright, the city was alive with possibilities, and he felt like he'd just shed a weight he'd been carrying for too long. He didn't notice the black Lincoln parked across the street. He didn't notice the man in the driver's seat watching through tinted windows. And he definitely didn't notice when that same Lincoln pulled away 3 minutes after Evelyn left the cafe on foot, heading toward the financial district. Inside Apex, the server who'd been refilling water glasses during the divorce signing picked up Marcus's signed papers from the table. She glanced at the terms, shook her head slightly, and took a photo with her phone. Then she sent a text to a number saved as Carter Legal. The message was simple. He took the bait. Signed everything, including the waiver. The reply came back instantly. Good. Start Phase 2. Marcus Hale's office overlooked downtown San Francisco from the 34th floor of the Millennium Tower. Not the penthouse, not yet, but high enough that people knew he was climbing. The view stretched from the Bay Bridge to the financial district, a constant reminder of how far he'd come from the mid-level analyst role he'd held just 4 years ago. Hale Ventures occupied a modest suite of offices that projected rising star rather than established power, which was exactly the image Marcus wanted. Hungry, ambitious, disruptive, the kind of firm that made older developers nervous and younger investors excited. The Chicago group confirmed, his partner David Rothstein said, walking into Marcus's office without knocking. David was 10 years older, cautious, the operational backbone to Marcus's visionary swagger. They want to meet next month, face to face. Marcus grinned. What did I tell you? You told me a lot of things. Most of them overconfident. And all of them right. Marcus leaned back in his chair. This is it, David. This is the deal that changes everything. Regional developers become national players. We're talking multi-state projects, master-planned communities, real legacy work. David sat down, pulling out his tablet. Assuming we can show them we have the infrastructure to scale, they're going to want to see our pipeline, our capital partners, our track record on projects over 50 million. We've got that. We've got some of that, David corrected. Our biggest completed project is 28 million, and half our pipeline is still in pre-development. Marcus waved this away. We package it right. Emphasize our growth trajectory. Show them we're lean and efficient, not bloated like the legacy firms. They're going to do due diligence, Marcus. Let them. Marcus stood, walking to the window. Everything checks out. We've delivered on time and under budget on every project we've closed. Our investor returns are solid. We have a clean record. What he didn't say, what David didn't know, was that several of those delivered-on-time projects had only happened because of consulting work that Evelyn had done behind the scenes. Nothing official, nothing documented. Just quiet problem-solving on permitting issues, contractor negotiations, and design conflicts that Marcus had mentioned at home and somehow got resolved by the next morning. He'd always assumed she just had good instincts, or maybe she'd picked up things from listening to him talk about work. He'd never asked where her solutions came from. Why would he? She was his wife. Helping him was what wives did. Speaking of clean records, David said carefully, I heard about the divorce. It's finalized. That was fast. Marcus shrugged. No point dragging it out. We wanted different things. Better to make a clean break. Sienna's a big step up, David said. And there was something in his tone Marcus couldn't quite read. Socially speaking, she's perfect, Marcus agreed. Her father's connected to half the development projects in Los Angeles. Her mother sits on 3 non-profit boards. When we announce our engagement next month, it's going to open every door we need. You're engaged already? Unofficially. I'm proposing at the Napa Valley Spring Gala. 500 guests, all the right people watching. It'll be perfect. David studied him. You really think everything's timing and strategy, don't you? In business? Absolutely. I meant in life. Marcus turned from the window. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. David stood. I'll prep the materials for Chicago. But Marcus, we need to be careful. This is the biggest pitch we've ever made. If we overpromise and can't deliver, it'll set us back years. We'll deliver, Marcus said. We always do. After David left, Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. 3 from Sienna about weekend plans, 2 from his lawyer about finalizing the divorce paperwork, 1 from his mother asking when she could meet this new girl. Nothing from Evelyn. Not that he expected anything. But the total silence felt strange. 3 years of marriage didn't usually end with such complete absence of communication. There were always loose ends, shared accounts to close, belongings to divide, mutual friends to navigate. But Evelyn had taken nothing except her clothes. She'd closed her own bank accounts. She'd disconnected her phone number. It was like she'd evaporated. Marcus told himself this was ideal. Clean breaks were best. Still, some small part of him wondered what she was doing now, where she'd gone, whether she was okay. He pushed the thought away. Evelyn was resourceful. She'd land on her feet. Probably find some nice, boring guy who wanted a nice, boring life. Get married again, have kids, live in some suburb somewhere, content with small dreams. That thought made him feel better somehow, like he'd set her free to find her proper place in the world, which obviously wasn't beside him anymore. His phone buzzed. Sienna. Reservation at Quince tonight, 8 p.m. Wear the navy suit. Love you. Marcus smiled. This was his life now. Beautiful women who made plans, important dinners at exclusive restaurants, a future that stretched upward like the buildings he developed. He looked at the divorce papers on his desk, signed and finalized. Then he dropped them in his desk drawer and closed it. That chapter was over. The next one was going to be extraordinary. Evelyn Carter walked into the Carter Holdings building on California Street at 7 in the morning, exactly as she had every day for the past 7 years. Except now, she didn't have to pretend anymore. The building was 70 stories of steel and glass, one of the anchors of San Francisco's financial district. The lobby gleamed with Italian marble, and the security team greeted her by name as she passed through the executive entrance. "Welcome back, Ms. Carter," the head of security said. "Thank you, Thomas." She took the private elevator to the 68th floor, where the executive offices of Carter Holdings occupied the entire level. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, the bay, and the peninsula stretching south toward Silicon Valley. Her office was exactly as she'd left it 3 years ago, minimalist, powerful, with a desk that had once belonged to her grandfather. The walls were lined with photographs of projects, hospitals, transit systems, mixed-use developments across 12 states. Carter Holdings didn't build vanity towers or luxury condos. They built infrastructure, the unglamorous, essential bones of cities. Her assistant, Margaret, appeared in the doorway with coffee and a tablet. "Your mother called," Margaret said. "She wants to know if you're sure about this." Evelyn smiled slightly. "What did you tell her?" "That you're always sure." "Good answer." Evelyn took the coffee and sat behind her desk. "What's on the schedule?" "Conference call with the Seattle team at 9, lunch with the mayor's office at 12:30, and your board meeting at 3 to officially announce your return. The press release? Ready to send. I'm just waiting for your approval." Margaret handed her the tablet. Evelyn read quickly. Carter Holdings announces return of Evelyn Carter as CEO. After 3 years of strategic advisory work, Evelyn Carter returns to active leadership of the $4.7 billion development firm founded by her grandfather in 1982. Carter, 31, previously served as CEO from 2019 to 2022, before stepping back for personal reasons. Under her leadership, the firm expanded into 7 new markets and pioneered innovative public-private partnerships in affordable housing and sustainable infrastructure. "I'm grateful for the time I took to focus on other priorities," Carter said in a statement. "But Carter Holdings is my family's legacy, and I'm excited to lead us into our next chapter of growth." The announcement comes as Carter Holdings considers several major acquisitions and expansion projects, including, "Send it at noon," Evelyn said. "Let's give the morning news cycle to someone else." Margaret nodded and left. Evelyn stood at the window looking out at the city. From here, she could see Union Square, could see the approximate location of Apex, the cafe where Marcus had thought he was ending their story. He had no idea he'd actually just written the opening chapter of his ending. The truth was simple. Evelyn had never stopped running Carter Holdings. Even during her marriage, she'd been working, just quietly, remotely, through trusted executives and late-night video calls after Marcus went to sleep. She'd stepped back from the public role because her grandfather had asked her to. "Take some time," he'd said before he died. "Live a life outside this building. Find out who you are when you're not carrying our name." So she'd done exactly that. She'd taken a job at a hotel using her mother's maiden name. She'd met Marcus at a charity event where she'd been serving drinks. He'd been charming, ambitious, full of dreams about what he was going to build. She'd found it refreshing. Someone who saw her as just Evelyn, not Evelyn Carter, heiress to billions. She'd dated him, eventually married him, and during those 3 years, she'd helped him in small ways. Advice on deals, connections to contractors, problem-solving on projects that hit, snags. Nothing that revealed who she really was. Just enough to help him succeed. Because despite everything, she had loved him. Or at least loved the version of him that existed when he wasn't obsessed with climbing higher. But then Sienna entered the picture, and Marcus's ambition turned into something uglier. A need to discard anything that reminded him of where he'd started, including her. Evelyn had seen it coming for months. She'd actually felt relieved when he finally asked for the divorce, because it meant she could stop pretending, stop being small, stop hiding. Her phone buzzed. A text from her lawyer, Richard Hammond, one of the best divorce attorneys in California. He signed the standard agreement. Didn't read the fine print. "You're clear." Evelyn texted back, "Perfect. Start phase 2. The fine print Marcus had ignored was simple. By accepting a no alimony, no asset divorce, he'd also signed a document confirming that Evelyn had made no material contributions to Hale Ventures or any of his business dealings. A waiver stating that she had no claim to any of his business interests, past, present, or future. Which would be very interesting when it came out that several of his signature deals had actually been structured using Carter Holdings resources. Resources she'd quietly lent him through shell companies and third-party contractors. All documented, all legal, all about to be called in. But that was for later. For now, Evelyn Carter had an empire to run. The Napa Valley Spring Gala was the kind of event that required 3 months of planning just to get on the guest list. Held annually at the Silverwood Estate, a sprawling vineyard property north of the valley, it attracted tech billionaires, real estate moguls, venture capitalists, and enough old money to fund a small nation. Marcus had been trying to get invited for 2 years. This year, thanks to Sienna's connections and his rising profile, he'd finally made it. "Remember," Sienna said, as their car wound up the tree-lined driveway toward the estate, "this isn't about selling anything. It's about being seen, being remembered, making people comfortable with you before you ever ask them for anything." "I know how it works," Marcus said, adjusting his bow tie in the mirror. "Do you?" Sienna gave him a look. "Because you have a habit of pitching deals at cocktail parties. That's called networking. That's called being desperate." She softened her tone. "Just tonight, be charming, be confident, let them come to you." Marcus knew she was right, but it annoyed him anyway. He'd built his entire career on aggressive pursuit, on being the hungriest person in the room, but apparently at this level, you had to pretend you weren't hungry at all. The estate was spectacular. Rolling lawns, vineyard rows stretching to the hills, string lights everywhere creating a warm glow as the sun set. A classical quartet played near the entrance. Waiters in crisp white uniforms circulated with champagne that probably cost more per bottle than Marcus's first car. "There's the mayor," Sienna murmured, nodding toward a cluster of people near the main terrace. And that's the Davidson family. Tech money, third generation. Oh, and Senator Wright is here. This is good, Marcus. This is very good. They spent the first hour circulating, Sienna introducing him to people who smiled politely and asked the right questions, but gave away nothing real. Marcus could feel himself being evaluated, measured against some invisible standard these people all understood, but he was still learning. He was networking with a venture capitalist who'd done 3 deals in urban redevelopment when he saw her. At first, it was just a sense of recognition, the way your eye catches on something familiar in a crowd. A woman standing near the vineyard, overlook, silhouetted against the sunset. Dark hair pulled back elegantly, simple black dress that somehow looked more expensive than anything else in the room. Something about her posture. Marcus's attention drifted from the conversation. The woman turned slightly, speaking to someone beside her. An older gentleman Marcus recognized as Lawrence Chen, one of the most influential developers in the state. Wait, not Chen. Different name. Something else. Marcus squinted, trying to get a better look at the woman's face, but she was too far away, and the light was wrong. Marcus? The venture capitalist was staring at him. Did you hear my question? Sorry, yes. Marcus dragged his attention back. You were asking about our pipeline in the southwest. But his mind was elsewhere now. That woman. Something about her reminded him of... No. Impossible. Evelyn was probably in some apartment somewhere, working her hotel job, living her small life. She wouldn't be here. Couldn't be here. This level of society was completely outside her world. Still, the resemblance was uncanny. Excuse me, Marcus said to the venture capitalist. I see someone I need to greet. He started toward the overlook, but Sienna caught his arm. Where are you going? I thought I saw someone. The mayor's about to make the welcome speech, Sienna interrupted. We need to be visible for that. Come on. She steered him toward the main terrace, where guests were gathering. Marcus glanced back toward the overlook, but the woman was gone. He told himself he'd imagined the resemblance. The light, the distance, his own guilty conscience creating phantoms. Because why would he feel guilty? He'd given Evelyn a clean exit, done right by her. The mayor spoke about community, philanthropy, and the future of California. Everyone applauded at appropriate moments. Champagne continued to flow. Marcus was talking to a group about the Chicago deal. Carefully, the way Sienna had coached him, making it sound exciting but not desperate. When someone joined the circle. Chicago? A woman's voice said. That's ambitious. The Midwest market is notoriously difficult for West Coast firms. Marcus turned and froze. It was her, but it couldn't be her. The woman standing beside him looked like Evelyn, had Evelyn's dark eyes and elegant features, but everything else was different. The way she held herself, confident, commanding, the way she dressed. That black dress probably cost more than Marcus's car payment. The way people seemed to instinctively defer to her when she spoke. Marcus Hale, she said, extending a hand. I don't believe we've met. I'm Evelyn Carter. Marcus stared at her hand like it might bite him. His brain couldn't process what he was seeing. You're here? Her smile was polite, professional, with just a hint of amusement. I'm a principal donor. I'm here every year. Principal donor, Marcus repeated stupidly. Carter Holdings, someone else in the circle said. They're one of the largest infrastructure development firms in the country. You must know them. Marcus felt like the ground was tilting. Carter Holdings. The name he'd seen on project signs across the city. The firm that had bid on several of the same projects as Hale Ventures. The company he'd envied for their resources and connections. Carter. Evelyn Carter. She'd used that name when she signed the divorce papers. He'd assumed it was just her maiden name. Some small act of reclaiming independence. He'd never thought to actually look it up. Never thought. "Are you all right?" Evelyn asked, and her concern sounded genuine. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Marcus managed. I didn't realize that I'd be here." She smiled. "Well, the development community is smaller than it seems. I'm sure we'll be running into each other quite a bit now that you're expanding. Chicago is an interesting choice, very competitive." Someone asked her a question about a project in Denver, and she answered with casual authority, discussing financials and timelines in a way that made it clear she wasn't just some heiress coasting on family money. She actually ran this company. Marcus felt Sienna's hand on his arm, squeezing hard enough to hurt. "We should go say hello to the Richardsons," Sienna said firmly. "They've been waiting to meet you." But Marcus couldn't move. Couldn't stop staring at this woman who was Evelyn, but also completely not Evelyn, who was someone he'd apparently never actually known. Evelyn met his eyes for just a moment, and in that moment, he saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, yes, but also something else. Pity. "Good luck in Chicago," she said pleasantly. "I hope it works out for you." Then she turned away, and someone else immediately pulled her into conversation about some project in Seattle, and Marcus realized that to everyone here, he was nobody. Just another mid-level developer trying to break into the big leagues, while Evelyn Carter was already at the summit. "Now," Sienna hissed, pulling him away. "We're leaving now." As they walked toward the exit, Marcus looked back once. Evelyn was laughing at something the mayor said, completely at ease, completely in her element. She didn't look at him again. Marcus didn't sleep that night, didn't eat the next morning, just sat in his office running searches on his computer, falling down a rabbit hole that rewrote his entire understanding of the past 3 years. Carter Holdings, founded in 1982, annual revenue $4.7 billion. Current CEO, Evelyn Carter, age 31. There were dozens of articles, photos of Evelyn at groundbreakings, at city council meetings, at industry conferences. Articles from before he'd met her, during their marriage, after. She'd never stopped working. She'd just worked quietly. One photo made his stomach drop. Evelyn standing next to the mayor of Oakland, both of them in hard hats, celebrating the completion of an affordable housing complex. The date on the article, 2 years ago, right in the middle of their marriage. He kept scrolling. A profile in the San Francisco Business Times from 5 years ago. At just 26, Evelyn Carter is already transforming her family's legacy development firm, pivoting from luxury projects to infrastructure and affordable housing. "I'm not interested in building monuments," Carter says. "I'm interested in building communities." Marcus remembered that summer. He'd been working 18-hour days trying to close a deal in Sacramento. He'd come home exhausted, and Evelyn had been there with dinner, listening to his problems, offering quiet suggestions that he'd incorporated without ever asking where her insights came from. Because he'd thought she was just being a supportive wife. He'd thought she worked at a hotel. He kept searching, each new piece of information like another blow. Carter Holdings had done projects in 11 states. They'd pioneered new models for public-private partnerships. They had a reputation for delivering complex projects on time and under budget, and they were currently in acquisition talks to purchase 3 mid-sized development firms, including the primary competitor to Hale Ventures in the southwest market. Marcus's phone rang. David. "Have you seen the news?" David asked without preamble. "What news?" "Carter Holdings just announced they're entering the Chicago market. They're partnering with the Reinhardt Group, the same investors we've been pitching to." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "When?" "The announcement went live an hour ago." David paused. "Marcus, did you know your ex-wife runs Carter Holdings? I just found out." "How did you not know? You were married to her." "She didn't tell me," Marcus snapped. "She worked at a hotel. She never said anything about—" "She was on the board of directors of 3 major non-profits during your marriage," David interrupted. "Her name is on the SF MoMA donor wall. She gave the keynote speech at the Western States Development Conference 2 years ago. How did you miss all of this?" Marcus had no answer, because the truth was he'd never asked. Never wondered why Evelyn always had insights into his deals. Never questioned why she seemed to know contractors and city officials. Never bothered to actually learn who she was outside of his own narrow definition of wife. "We need to do damage control," David said. "If Carter Holdings is competing in Chicago, the Reinhardt Group might be more interested in them than us. They're bigger, more established, and frankly, they have a better track record on the kind of projects Chicago wants." "Set up a call," Marcus said. "I'll pitch them harder." "Marcus, just set up the call." He hung up and went back to his computer. There had to be something, some angle he could use, some way to salvage this. His email pinged. A message from an address he didn't recognize. Subject: Request for meeting. "Dear Mr. Hale, Carter. Holdings is conducting due diligence on several recent projects in the Bay Area market. We've identified some concerns regarding certain subcontracting relationships and permit acquisitions related to your firm's developments. We'd like to discuss these matters at your earliest convenience. Please contact our legal team to schedule a meeting. Best regards, Richard Hammond, General Counsel, Carter Holdings." Marcus's hands went cold. Due diligence. Legal team. Concerns. He clicked through to his project files, his mind racing. What could they have found? Everything about Hale Ventures was above board. He'd been careful. His lawyers had vetted every deal. Except, Marcus remembered now. Small things. A contractor who'd completed work on his first major project. Evelyn had recommended them, said she'd heard they were reliable. A permit issue that had resolved itself overnight after Marcus had complained about it over dinner. A design firm that had done phenomenal work for below-market rates because, Evelyn had said, they were friends of her family. Friends of her family. Carter Holdings. Oh, God. She hadn't just helped him. She'd built parts of his business for him. And he'd signed a document saying she'd made no material contributions. A document that was now sitting in her lawyer's office. The door to Marcus's office opened. Sienna walked in, looking furious. "Why didn't you tell me you were married to Evelyn Carter?" "I didn't know she was Evelyn Carter." "How is that possible?" "She didn't tell me. She used a different name when we met. She worked a normal job. She never—" Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "She let me think she was nobody." Sienna stared at him. "She let you think? Or you assumed?" "What difference does it make?" "It makes all the difference," Sienna said coldly. "Because right now, everyone at that gala is talking about how you divorced one of the most powerful women in California to be with me. Do you know what that makes me look like? Do you know what that makes you look like?" "I didn't know." "That's even worse." Sienna's voice rose. "It means you were married to someone for 3 years and never bothered to learn who they actually were. It means you're either incredibly oblivious or incredibly arrogant. Either way, it's not a good look, Marcus." Marcus's phone buzzed. Another email. This one from the Reinhardt Group. Subject: Chicago Project. Change in direction. His hands shook as he opened it. Mr. Hale, after careful consideration, we've decided to pursue our Chicago development with Carter Holdings. We appreciate your interest and wish you success in your future endeavors. Regards, Martin Reinhardt. Marcus read it 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Sienna read over his shoulder. They just killed your Chicago deal. I can see that. And you don't think that has anything to do with Carter Holdings? Marcus looked up at her. Are you saying she sabotaged me deliberately? I'm saying she didn't have to. She just had to be better than you, which apparently wasn't very hard. Sienna picked up her purse. I need to think about whether this relationship still makes sense for me. You're leaving? I'm reconsidering, Sienna said. I signed up to be with someone on the rise, not someone falling. She walked out. Marcus sat alone in his office as the morning light filtered through the windows. His phone kept buzzing. Emails, calls, messages, but he couldn't bring himself to look. He'd thought he was signing away a wife. He'd actually been signing away his future. The meeting happened in a conference room that probably cost more per hour to rent than Marcus's first apartment. 42nd floor of the Carter Holdings building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. A view that reminded Marcus exactly how far beneath Evelyn's level he'd always been. Richard Hammond, Evelyn's general counsel, sat at the head of the table with 3 associates flanking him. Legal pads, folders, tablets. An array of documentation that made Marcus's single lawyer look severely outgunned. Evelyn herself wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. This was beneath her now. Thank you for meeting with us, Mr. Hale, Hammond said pleasantly. He was in his 50s, silver-haired, with the calm demeanor of someone who'd never lost a case. I'll get straight to the point. We've identified several instances where Carter Holdings resources were used in projects credited to Hale Ventures. That's impossible, Marcus's lawyer, Tom Bradford, said. Mr. Hale has built his company independently. Hammond slid a folder across the table. Project documentation for the Sacramento Medical Plaza. Your primary contractor was Meridian Construction. What you may not know is that Meridian is a wholly owned subsidiary of Carter Holdings. They were contracted through a shell company, but ultimately answered to Ms. Carter. Marcus opened the folder. There it was. Documentation showing the ownership trail he'd never bothered to trace. The Redwood Commons development in Oakland, Hammond continued, sliding another folder. Permits processed through Bay Area Development Services. Also a Carter Holdings subsidiary. Another folder. The residential project in Fremont. Design work by Stellar Architecture Group. Majority owned by Carter Holdings. Another. Infrastructure consulting for the San Jose Mixed-Use Complex. Pacific Engineering Solutions. Again owned by Carter Holdings. Hammond sat back. Shall I continue? We have documentation on 11 projects. All told, approximately $67 million worth of contracted work that your firm took credit for, but Carter Holdings resourced. Marcus felt sick. Evelyn arranged those. She was my wife. She was helping me. She was, Hammond agreed. And in the divorce settlement, you signed a waiver stating that she made no material contributions to Hale Ventures. That waiver releases her from any claims you might make against her. But unfortunately, Mr. Hale, it doesn't release you from claims she might make. Tom leaned forward. What exactly are you claiming? We're not claiming anything yet. We're simply pointing out that Hale Ventures owes Carter Holdings approximately $23 million in fees that were either reduced, deferred, or waived during Mr. Hale's marriage to Miss Carter. Fees that are now due. 23 million. Marcus's voice came out as a croak. I don't have 23 million in liquid assets. We're aware, Hammond said, which is why we'd like to propose an alternative. He slid one more folder across the table. Carter Holdings would like to acquire Hale Ventures. We'll absorb your outstanding debts, honor your existing contracts, and retain your key staff. You'll receive a modest payment for the company's remaining assets, and we'll structure the deal to minimize tax implications for you. Marcus stared at the acquisition proposal. The numbers were technically fair. Market value for what his company was actually worth once the Carter Holdings debt was factored in, which was almost nothing. And if I refuse? Marcus asked. Then we'll pursue collection through standard legal channels, Hammond said calmly, which will likely force Hale Ventures into bankruptcy. Your business reputation will be destroyed. You'll lose everything anyway, and it will take significantly longer. This way is cleaner. This is extortion, Tom said. This is business, Hammond corrected. Mr. Hale built his company using resources he didn't own. Those resources are being called in. He has two choices: sell now and walk away with something, or fight and lose everything. Marcus felt like he was drowning. I need time to think. You have 72 hours, Hammond said. After that, we file collection proceedings. The meeting ended. Marcus and Tom rode the elevator down in silence. This is a nightmare, Tom finally said. But Hammond's right about one thing. If they file, you'll definitely lose. At least this way you might salvage something. She's destroying me, Marcus said. She's collecting on services rendered, Tom corrected. Services you apparently accepted without understanding where they came from. Did you really not know your wife owned all those companies? I didn't ask. Tom looked at him like he'd admitted to driving blindfolded. You didn't ask. You were married to a woman who constantly solved problems for your business, and you never once wondered how. Marcus had no answer. That evening, Sienna came by his apartment. Marcus hadn't seen her in 3 days. I'm moving my things out, she said from the doorway. She wasn't coming inside. I wanted to let you know. Sienna. My father looked into the situation, she interrupted. Apparently Carter Holdings is about to be the largest infrastructure development firm on the West Coast. They're doing projects with 3 different city governments and the state of California. They're exactly the kind of partner my family wants relationships with. Marcus understood. So you can't be with me. I can't be with someone who's about to be publicly humiliated. I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. But I have my own reputation to protect. She left her key on the entry table and walked away. Marcus stood alone in his apartment, the luxury condo he'd bought 6 months ago, the one he'd thought represented his success. He couldn't afford it anymore. He couldn't afford any of this anymore. His phone buzzed. A text from David. I heard about the Carter Holdings meeting. We need to talk about next steps. Call me. But what next steps were there? Sell the company to Evelyn's firm and walk away with scraps? Refuse and get buried in litigation while watching his reputation crumble? Marcus walked to his window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in a building twice as tall as this one, Evelyn Carter was probably working late. Or maybe she was at dinner with important people. Or maybe she'd already forgotten about him entirely. That last possibility bothered him most. Not because he wanted her back, but because he'd been so certain the divorce meant nothing to her. Now he realized it hadn't meant nothing. It had meant freedom. Freedom to finally stop hiding, stop being small, stop pretending she was anything other than what she'd always been. Someone operating on a level Marcus hadn't even known existed. He'd thought he was discarding her. She'd been shedding him. And now she was offering him the same mercy he'd shown her that day in the café, a chance to walk away. Just not beside her. Never beside her again. Marcus signed the acquisition papers 2 days later. Hale Ventures became a subsidiary of Carter Holdings. Marcus Hale became unemployed. The news broke on a Monday morning. TechCrunch ran it first. Carter Holdings acquires Hale Ventures in surprise move. The San Francisco Business Times followed with more details. Marcus Hale's rapid rise ends with acquisition by ex-wife's firm. But it was the profile piece in Forbes that destroyed him. The article traced the full story. How Marcus had met Evelyn Carter when she was working incognito, how he'd married her without knowing who she was, how she'd quietly supported his business from behind the scenes, and how he'd divorced her to upgrade to Sienna DeMarco, right as his career was taking off. The article quoted anonymous sources close to the deal. They painted a picture of Marcus as oblivious at best, exploitative at worst. Someone who'd used his wife's resources without acknowledgement, then discarded her when he thought he'd outgrown her. The worst part was the sidebar. The real Evelyn Carter. A profile celebrating her business acumen, her innovation in affordable housing, her quiet philanthropy. The article described how she'd taken a year away from the public eye to live normally and had accidentally married someone who never bothered to ask about her life before him. One quote from Evelyn, carefully worded. "Sometimes people see what they want to see. I'm grateful Marcus could build something during our marriage. I wish him well." The grace of that statement made Marcus look even worse. The internet responded exactly as the internet does. Within hours, Marcus's name was trending on social media. Memes appeared, TikTok videos dissecting the story, think pieces about men who don't see their wives as full people. One tweet with 200,000 likes. Imagine divorcing a billionaire CEO because you thought you could do better, and then finding out you were the downgrade the whole time. Marcus's inbox exploded. Interview requests from business podcasts wanting to discuss what went wrong. Speaking invitations to panels about learning from failure. Journalists asking for his side of the story. He declined everything. What could he possibly say? "I didn't know my wife was a billionaire because I never asked." Wasn't a defense, it was an indictment. His professional reputation evaporated within weeks. The phone calls stopped. The invitations to industry events dried up. People who'd wanted meetings with him 3 months ago suddenly couldn't find time in their schedules. David left to take a position at another firm. Ironically, one owned by Carter Holdings. "I'm sorry, Marcus," David said during their final conversation. "But I have a family to support. And honestly, you did this to yourself. All you had to do was actually pay attention to the woman you married." Former clients quietly moved their business elsewhere. Marcus's name, once associated with rising ambition, was now associated with failure and hubris. The luxury condo sold. Marcus needed the liquidity. He moved into a modest apartment in the Sunset District. His Tesla went back to the dealership. The Rolex that had flashed like a victory sign in Apex ended up in a pawn shop. Marcus found work consulting for small developers, the kind of unglamorous projects he'd been doing before Hale Ventures took off. Mid-level analysis, code reviews, feasibility studies. Nothing exciting, nothing prestigious, just work. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was back exactly where he'd been before meeting Evelyn. Except now everyone knew it wasn't talent that had elevated him. It was her. And without her, he was simply average. He saw Sienna once, 6 months later, at an industry mixer he'd attended because he needed any kind of networking opportunity he could get. She was on the arm of a prominent venture capitalist, laughing at something he'd said. She saw Marcus across the room and immediately looked away. He left early. That night, alone in his small apartment, Marcus finally let himself feel the full weight of what he'd lost. Not the money, not the status, the person. He'd been married for 3 years to someone extraordinary and had never once asked her who she really was. Never been curious about her day. Never wondered about her dreams. He'd accepted her help without acknowledging it was help. He'd enjoyed her insights without asking where they came from, because he'd decided she was just the supporting character in his story, when really, he'd been a footnote in hers. Marcus pulled up Evelyn's company website on his laptop. There was a news section with updates on Carter Holdings projects, a hospital in Denver, affordable housing in Portland, a transit center in Seattle. Real things that helped real people, the kind of work he used to dismiss as unglamorous, the kind of work that actually mattered. There was a photo of Evelyn at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, smiling as she handed oversized scissors to a young girl. The caption explained it was the opening of a youth center in East Oakland, fully funded by Carter Holdings. She looked happy. More than that, she looked free. Marcus closed his laptop and sat in the dark, finally understanding what Evelyn had tried to tell him that day in Apex. She did care about things, just not him. 2 years passed. Marcus Hale learned to live smaller. He rented a 1-bedroom apartment in the outer Sunset, where fog rolled in most mornings and you could hear the ocean if you listened carefully. He worked contract jobs for various firms, never quite landing anywhere permanently. His resume was poison now. Everyone knew the story, but he survived. He learned to cook his own meals, learned that the bus system worked fine, learned that there was a strange kind of peace in being nobody, no pressure to perform, no need to network constantly, no exhausting maintenance of an image. He went to therapy, not because he wanted to, but because his sister insisted after he'd admitted he was struggling. The therapist helped him understand what he'd always suspected, but never wanted to face. He'd spent his entire adult life chasing external validation, building an identity on achievement and status rather than character. You saw people as functions, the therapist said during one session. Your wife was a support system. Your girlfriend was a status symbol. Your colleagues were networking opportunities. No one was just a person to you. That's harsh, Marcus said. Is it wrong? Marcus thought about it. No. The hardest part was accepting that he couldn't undo it. Couldn't apologize his way back to respectability. Couldn't work hard enough to erase what he'd done. He'd been given an extraordinary gift. A partnership with someone brilliant. And he'd thrown it away because he couldn't see past his own ambition. He followed Evelyn's career from a distance, the way you follow news about someone you used to know. Carter Holdings continued to grow. Major projects in 15 states now. Evelyn was featured in Business Week's 40 Under 40. She gave a TED talk about sustainable urban development that went viral. She started a foundation providing scholarships to women pursuing careers in construction and development. The inaugural class included 20 young women, all mentored by senior executives at Carter Holdings. Marcus watched her TED talk one night. She was poised, articulate, passionate. She talked about her grandfather's legacy, about building communities rather than monuments, about the responsibility that came with resources. She never mentioned her marriage, never mentioned Marcus at all. He was grateful for that. He dated occasionally, nothing serious. Most relationships fizzled out after a few months when the women realized Marcus wasn't going anywhere fast. That this apartment, this contract work, this quiet life, this was it. This was who he actually was without borrowed resources and connections. Some of them were kind about it, others weren't. Marcus learned to accept both reactions with equal grace. He reconnected with old friends he'd neglected during his rise, people he'd dropped because they weren't useful to his career. Most of them were wary at first. A few refused to see him at all, but some accepted his apologies and gave him another chance. Slowly, painfully, Marcus built a different kind of life. Not impressive, not enviable, just honest. He took a permanent position with a small urban planning firm in Oakland. The work was meaningful, helping neighborhoods navigate development pressure, advocating for affordable housing, working with community groups. The pay was modest. The office was cramped. His colleagues were dedicated people who could have made more money elsewhere but chose to do this work anyway. Marcus found he actually liked it. For the first time in years, he wasn't performing, wasn't positioning himself for the next deal, wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just doing work that needed doing. His boss, Maria, was a 60-year-old urban planner who'd spent 40 years fighting for equitable development. She'd hired Marcus despite his reputation because, as she put it, everyone deserves a second chance. Whether you earn it is up to you. He tried to earn it. One afternoon, Marcus was reviewing plans for a housing development when Maria called him into her office. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her expression unreadable. Marcus's stomach dropped. "Who?" "She says it's personal." Evelyn was waiting in the small conference room, looking out at the Oakland skyline. She wore a navy suit and still had that same quiet command that made rooms rearrange themselves around her. She turned when Marcus entered. "Hello, Marcus." "Evelyn." His voice sounded strange in his own ears. "What are you doing here?" "I had a meeting nearby. Thought I'd stop in." She gestured at the office around them. "Maria speaks highly of you. Says you've been doing good work." "You know Maria?" "Carter Holdings partners with several community organizations. Maria and I serve on a board together." Evelyn smiled slightly. "It's a smaller world than you realized." Marcus didn't know what to say. "Can we talk?" Evelyn asked. "Just for a few minutes?" They sat across from each other at the small conference table. Marcus felt like he was back in Apex, except now all the power dynamics were visible. They'd always been there. He just hadn't seen them. "I wanted to tell you something," Evelyn said. "I'm not angry with you anymore. I was for a while, but I'm not now." "Why not?" Marcus asked. "I used you. I discarded you. I destroyed what we had because I was too arrogant to see what I actually had." "All true," Evelyn agreed. "But I also made choices. I chose to help you without telling you who I was. I chose to let you think I was someone smaller than I was. I chose not to correct your assumptions." "Why?" "Because I wanted to know what it was like to be loved for myself. Not for my name or my money or my connections. Just me." She looked out the window. "But the problem was, you never really knew me. You knew a version I performed, so maybe you couldn't have loved the real me because I never showed her to you." "I should have asked," Marcus said. "I should have been curious. I should have cared enough to actually learn who you were." "Yes," Evelyn said simply. "You should have." They sat in silence for a moment. "I read about your work here," Evelyn said. "Affordable housing advocacy, community development. It's good work, Marcus. Important work. It's not what I thought I'd be doing. Is it better?" Marcus considered that. "It's more honest." Evelyn nodded. "That's something." She stood to leave, and Marcus stood with her. "Why did you really come here?" he asked. "After everything, why visit me?" Evelyn looked at him with those same dark eyes that had once seemed so mysterious, that now just seemed sad. "Because I wanted to see if you'd changed," she said. "If you'd learned anything." And? And I think you have. Not enough to undo what happened, but enough to maybe be better going forward. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Marcus, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you found something that matters to you. I never wanted to destroy you. I just needed you to stop using me. I know, Marcus said. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry for all of it. You deserved better than what I gave you. Evelyn's smile was genuine this time. I did, but I also got better. Just not from you. She left. Marcus stood in the conference room for a long time after she was gone, processing what had just happened. She'd won, not just in business, in life. She'd moved on completely while he was still trying to rebuild himself from the rubble of who he'd been. But somehow, that felt right. Some losses were supposed to be permanent. 5 years after the divorce, Marcus was in Los Angeles for a conference on affordable housing initiatives. His firm had been invited to present their work on community-led development in Oakland. It was a small panel, not particularly prestigious, but the work mattered to Marcus now in ways his old projects never had. The conference was held at the Bonaventure Hotel downtown. Marcus arrived early, checked into his modest room, and headed down to the lobby to grab coffee before the panel. The lobby was full of conference attendees, most of them wearing lanyards and talking shop. Marcus got his coffee and found a quiet corner to review his notes. Marcus Hale? He looked up. The man extending his hand was in his late 30s, wearing an expensive suit and an easy smile. I thought that was you. Jacob Winters. We met briefly at a housing conference in Portland a couple years ago. Marcus stood and shook his hand. I remember. You were with the Reinhardt Group, Jacob said. Still am Senior VP now. The Reinhardt Group, the Chicago investors who'd chosen Carter Holdings over Hale Ventures all those years ago. The deal that had started Marcus's collapse. Congratulations, Marcus said, meaning it. Thanks. I'm actually here to scout projects for potential investment. We're expanding our affordable housing portfolio. Jacob gestured at Marcus's conference lanyard. You're speaking on the community development panel, right? I am. I'll be there. Your firm's Oakland project got some good press. Innovative financing model, strong community buy-in. That's the kind of work we're looking to support now. Jacob's phone buzzed. I need to take this, but let's talk after your panel. Could be some partnership opportunities. He walked away, and Marcus sat back down, trying to process what had just happened. The Reinhardt Group. Interested in his work. Potential partnerships. The universe had a strange sense of irony. Marcus's panel went well. He talked about the importance of community voices in development, about building projects that served actual needs rather than investor returns, about measuring success in quality of life rather than profit margins. The audience asked good questions. Several people approached him afterward with interest in collaboration. Jacob was among them. That was excellent, he said. Really thoughtful approach. Listen, I'd love to set up a proper meeting to discuss some projects we're funding. Can I get your contact information? Marcus gave him a business card. They talked for a few more minutes about timelines and next steps, and then Jacob excused himself to catch another session. Marcus was heading to the hotel restaurant for lunch when he saw her. Evelyn was in the lobby, talking with a group of people near the conference registration desk. She was keynoting the conference tomorrow. Her name had been on the main banner outside. Evelyn Carter, Reimagining Urban Infrastructure for the 21st Century. She looked exactly as she had 2 years ago when she'd visited his office. Confident, composed, utterly in her element. Marcus considered leaving through a side exit, avoiding the encounter entirely. But something stopped him. He walked over, waiting for a natural pause in her conversation. "Evelyn." She turned, and for a split second, he saw surprise in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by polite recognition. "Marcus, what a small world. I'm presenting on the community development panel." "That's wonderful." She excused herself from her group and stepped aside with him. "I heard about your work in Oakland. It's making a real difference." "Thank you. I heard you're keynoting tomorrow. Looking forward to it." There was a brief pause, not awkward exactly, but weighted with history neither of them quite knew how to address. "I saw you talking with Jacob Winters," Evelyn said. "The Reinhardt Group is a good potential partner. They're doing excellent work in the affordable housing space now." "Funny how things work out," Marcus said. "They chose Carter Holdings over Hale Ventures 5 years ago. Now they're interested in my new firm." "You're not the same person you were 5 years ago," Evelyn said. "Neither is the Reinhardt Group. People evolve." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw no malice, no triumph, no sense that she was enjoying this moment of comparison, just neutrality, which was somehow more definitive than any anger could have been. "How have you been?" Marcus asked, because it felt like the thing to say. "Good. Busy. The foundation is expanding. We're breaking ground on 3 major projects this quarter, and my daughter just turned 2. Marcus felt that land. "You have a daughter. Maya." Evelyn's face softened in a way Marcus had never seen during their marriage. "She's incredible. Exhausting, but incredible. Congratulations. Is her father?" "He's here, actually, attending the conference. He runs a sustainable architecture firm we partner with frequently." She smiled. "It's complicated, bringing a toddler to Los Angeles, but we're making it work." Marcus realized he didn't even feel jealous, just separate, like Evelyn was describing a life that existed in an entirely different universe from his own. "I'm happy for you," he said, and meant it. "Thank you." Evelyn glanced at her watch. "I have a lunch meeting, but it was good seeing you, Marcus. Truly. I'm glad you found work that matters to you." "Evelyn." Marcus stopped her before she could leave. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you plan all of it? The acquisition, the way everything fell apart for me, all of it?" Evelyn considered the question. "I planned the acquisition, yes. I planned calling in the resources you'd used. But I didn't plan for you to sign a divorce settlement without reading it. I didn't plan for you to build a company on my connections without acknowledging it. I didn't plan for you to divorce me in the most public, humiliating way possible." She met his eyes. "I just responded to what you did. You created the situation. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences." "That's fair," Marcus said. "And for what it's worth, I didn't enjoy it. Not the way you might think. I wasn't rubbing my hands together in some villainous plot. I was just done. Done being invisible. Done being taken for granted. Done being treated like a supporting character." "I made you feel invisible," Marcus said, "even when you were standing right in front of me." "Yes," Evelyn said simply. "You did." There was nothing left to say after that. They stood in the hotel lobby, 2 people who'd once been married but now were simply strangers who happened to share a history. "Good luck with your keynote tomorrow," Marcus said. "Good luck with the Reinhardt Group," Evelyn replied. She walked away without looking back, disappearing into the crowd of conference attendees. Marcus watched her go, and realized he felt nothing. Not longing, not regret, not even nostalgia, just acknowledgement. He'd lost something irreplaceable, yes. But he'd also learned something essential. That people weren't functions or tools or stepping stones. They were entire worlds, complete unto themselves, deserving of curiosity and respect and genuine attention. He'd learned it too late to save his marriage, but not too late to change who he became. Marcus finished his coffee, gathered his things, and headed back upstairs. He had another panel in the afternoon, and then dinner with some colleagues from his firm. Tomorrow he'd attend some workshops, maybe take in Evelyn's keynote, and then fly back to Oakland. Back to his small apartment and his meaningful work and his honest, humble life. It wasn't the future he'd imagined 5 years ago when he'd signed those divorce papers with such careless confidence, but it was real. And maybe that was better. Because when you finally stop performing and just start being, the applause stops. But so does the exhaustion. Marcus Hale would never be powerful, would never be wealthy, would never reclaim the status he'd briefly held. But he'd learned to see people as people. And for the first time in his life, that felt like enough. End.